When did the conflict between Iran and the United States actually begin? To understand that, we need to go back to 1953. In that year, the United States helped overthrow Iran's democratically elected government and brought Shah Mohammad Reza Pahlavi back to power. Why did the U.S. do this? Because soon after returning to power, the Shah gave 40% of Iran's oil to Western oil companies. Before long, he became America's closest ally in the Middle East. The United States even provided him with nuclear reactors and uranium capable of being used for weapons. In other words, Iran's nuclear program originally began with American assistance. However, the Shah, who was popular in Washington, had become extremely unpopular in his own country. Protests spread across Iran, and eventually the Shah was forced to leave the country. Soon after, the exiled religious leader Ayatollah Khomeini returned to Iran and took control of the government. This transformed Iran into an anti-Western Islamic republic. Former friends had now become enemies. Soon after, Iranian students stormed the U.S. Embassy in Tehran and took 66 Americans hostage. They were only released after the United States promised not to interfere in Iran's internal affairs. But the tension didn't end there. When neighboring Iraq invaded Iran, the United States once again became involved, this time supporting Iraq. In that war, around 500,000 Iranians were killed. Later, when more than 200 American soldiers were killed in an attack carried out by Hezbollah, a group backed by Iran, the United States imposed harsh sanctions on Iran and labeled Iran-linked groups as terrorist organizations. The sanctions continued to grow. U.S. President George W. Bush even labeled Iran part of the axis of evil. America claimed Iran was secretly developing nuclear weapons, while Iran insisted its nuclear program was not for military purposes, but for energy production. At the same time, Iranian leaders continued to fuel anti-American sentiment. In 2015, both countries finally reached a nuclear agreement. Iran agreed to limit its nuclear program, and in return, many sanctions were lifted. But in 2018, the United States withdrew from the deal, saying it could no longer trust Iran. In response, Iran restarted and expanded its nuclear activities. Eventually, the United States carried out military strikes against Iran. Then came the moment that changed everything. Iran's supreme leader was killed in American and Israeli attacks. That moment marked the beginning of the current war. And just like in 1953, Washington's objective once again appears to be regime change in Tehran.